The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. Still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
All right. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the episode 26 recap. I'm joined today by Mr. Two Pineapples, Lou Atori, and myself. I am Dane DuPont from Hawaii Tracker and the Hawaiian Volcano Education Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. How you doing today, Lou? I'm doing pretty good. I'm interested to see what we got lined up. Even though we work on it all week, it's always fun to recap it like we're going to do tonight with each of the episodes from 14 on and looking back. This last episode was interesting. It was an all-nighter again, so it took me 2 days to recover from that one. So let's get into it.
Yeah, you stayed up and were up for the entire duration of that thing.
Yeah, I did. That was a long
I
night.
remember messaging you something like go to bed at like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. We do have a two-parter. This is part 2 of our episode recap, going through episodes 1 through 26 of the eruption so far, looking specifically at the fountain heights that have been associated and some of the videos that we've been able to get through the USGS, as well as some of the contributors to both Hawaii Tracker and to Pineapple. So we appreciate all of the footage and everything that we get from them.
Hey, one thing before you get started, Dane, I'm going to drop the link here into the chat. So if anybody on Facebook would like to share their images, the videos, we'll give you the link to join our Facebook group, Hawaii Tracker. So go ahead and share what you have when you're up there.
Yeah, definitely. And we do have some of the footage to go over from the Hawaii Tracker contributors from this last episode too.
It's always nice to be able to share everybody else's footage instead of just the same stock stuff you kind of see rolling around.
Right, exactly. Everybody gets the USGS stuff. It's all public domain, so it becomes like the most distributed, essentially. Right. So yeah, those personal angles and people out there, there's some really good stuff. So without any further ado, let's get into our summary. All right. This is your Hawaiian Volcano summary for June 26, 2025. We are coming out of episode 26, which occurred last Friday morning, early in the morning, not long after our previous live stream. We are now in the episode 27 waiting room, but here you see the live shots up at the caldera currently. We do have a little bit of the time lapses to go through from episode 26. Started out with not much precursor activity, as much as maybe could have been expected based on previous episodes, but happened rather quickly, and then ended about 8 hours later. Looking at a different angle of this initial sequence, it begins at about 1 a.m. So see some of that spatter happening, and then once it starts, it does not back off, and we get some of the largest fountains that we have seen so far over the course of this eruption since mid-December. Moving on to the next. It is black here, it is running, but we do see that early morning activity and then that huge fountain, which does become a little bit clearer as the conditions improve. Also shooting out into the Ka'u Desert and building that berm on the backside of the caldera there. So huge fountains, and then once they stopped, it stopped rapidly. Looking at the impact map, this map has not been updated this week, but really there's not much changes happening. The vents are still the same. The eruption sites all very similar, but we're adding a couple meters, several meters in depth every single time across the caldera floor. I did want to take a look at the tilt that is at the summit from the UWD tiltmeter, and we see it recharging after the end of the last episode, as we've seen in previous episodes. A rather significant dip on the tiltmeter with that last episode. But more recently today, we see one of these events take place that flatlines the overall tilt for a little while before it begins to pick back up. And what these ends up translating to is potentially more time until the next episode begins. We see some of these that have happened previously around the 18th and 19th, and how it delayed the beginning of the next episode. Checking on the earthquakes, not a whole lot to talk about. We have some clusters in the Deep Pahala region, some out by the volcano formerly known as Loihi, and some south flank earthquakes, as well as a few up around the summit. Interesting thing is, though, that according to USGS, there were no earthquakes felt over the past week, as reported by the Felt It reports. Looking at some of the depth of these earthquakes, really it's a cluster, lots of little ones on the south flank, and then the blue on the left being Deep Pahala. And with the air quality, looking at the purple air monitors, we're seeing during these pauses roughly 1,200 tons of SO2 emissions per day, which is nothing compared to when the fissures or these episodes begin. And right now we see green across the board all the way around the island. That will change when the episode begins. And looking at the forecast right now from the VMAP project from University of Hawaii Manoa, we see those predominant trade winds and then a little bit of fall off tomorrow, but mostly trade wind activity here, which is good. We'll talk more about that later. And we'll leave you here with a picture or a video from Hawaii Tracker, the latest episode and the fountains associated with it. And for Mauna Loa, slowly continues to reinflate. No real changes there. It's still green, normal conditions as listed by the USGS HVO. And that'll do it. This is your Hawaiian Volcano summary for the week. All right.
1,250 feet, Dane. That's our record breaker for this eruption since December 23rd, 2024.
Yeah, so I did want to just highlight this video and talk about it a little bit more, because you see one of these pulses, for lack of a better word, that comes through the system. So we have the huge fountain taking place, and then you'll see a burst happen around the 12-second mark of the video. We'll see it.
Yeah, you can't miss it.
You can't miss it, really. So here we go. Just started over again. So you can see big fountain going, 1,000 feet tall probably, but then this burst happens and a large amount of volume comes up really quickly. It goes a little bit higher as well. So those were, how many of those did you see? Like, how many of those were occurring that you caught?
Several. I couldn't give you a total number, but throughout the night and early morning, several of them.
Several
like
of
that.
them.
But that's not unusual. I mean, that's an extreme one right there compared to what we've seen over the past 26 episodes. But we've seen this before, just not that like that. That was visually impressive right there. But
yeah,
we see that those big gas pushes often.
Yeah, we see the gas pushes. That was just a really interesting one.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's becoming more gassy, which is something that Philip has mentioned as a possibility as these episodes progress. Is eventually there's even the possibility of gas jets forming. Right? We haven't seen anything like that yet, but these big pulses, pretty cool. And we do have another video, this one from Justin, showing just that raw power of that fountain. No burst in this one, but just the fountain. And it's crazy how any bigger people are going to have to figure out how to use them zoom features to zoom out more.
Right.
Fisheye lens just to be able to get it all in frame. So thank you, Justin. And I think we have, one more here with some nene that flew across. This is from the Kanekekoi overlook side, and the nene flying across. Not often you see nene going over the caldera. Usually
not that side. Usually over like Waldron's Ledge or over the Kīlauea overlooks the steam vents area. We'll catch them over there quite often in the mornings. But yeah, you're right. We don't see them too often over there.
They just wanted a view as well.
Right.
All right, I think that does it for some of the clips I wanted to show and highlight from Hawaii Tracker. And there's a bunch more on there, a bunch of photos, videos, really good stuff, but some different things in there. USGS did put out a video of episodes 25 and 26, which is good because we get that little bit of a juxtaposition on the fountain heights and how they developed over the course of the episode. So this is episode 25. See, those initial heights are much higher than what it ends up falling back to still. But this was a rather long episode, wasn't it? 25 comparatively. Then 26, it starts out and really just builds off of that. It doesn't do a bunch of the toying with us and pump fakes that once it started, it went going. And then we saw the activation of the south vent as well, and the accumulation of all that tephra being blown by the wind. So yeah, huge fountain, 1,250 feet. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. Yeah, and this one here, as we get led into these episodes, the conversation that we see coming from USGS, or the words we see coming from USGS, is we're going to have days of possible precursory activity, but we haven't seen that in the last 2 episodes, really.
Right. And that was really when we were up watching that episode, and I was honestly ready to call it the episode a half hour, around a little after, not long after midnight.
Right.
Because one thing we've seen is when that activity lasts, right, for 20, 30 minutes without diminishing, without a drain back, without anything like that, it usually means that it's coming, if not right on deck. Right. So we were talking about that, and eventually we waited a little bit, and then we pulled the trigger, and USGS pulled the trigger, not at roughly the same time. But it's really, you don't want to jump the gun and call it too early, because they do like to fake you out. But by the time we called it, it was going for about an hour, I feel like.
Yeah, it was.
Without any drop off and steadily building. At that point, what we've seen in past episodes, it's the time. So that was interesting. And we have grown accustomed to that time of all the precursor activity, but not so much lately. So interesting stuff. One of the things we get out of these huge fountains, is the bigger they are, the more that they're putting that tephra and all of this volcanic fallout downwind, right? So we've been lucky with the most recent episodes where the winds have been dominated by the trade winds and pushing stuff out into the Ka'u Desert, which has accumulated this rapidly growing hill behind the backside of the caldera. And you can see this GIF that USGS put out, seen from the Kīlauea overlook, the former Jagger Museum area. And we can see that hill's growing meters. How I can't remember exactly how much a day, but I want to say it was like 30 feet a day.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
And
this hill is formed over the last few episodes. So this is.
Do they have that before and after picture in that slide?
I mean, it's really the first frame is the before.
I guess, yeah.
So yeah, this starts out in December, and then you can see, but the real accumulation has been over the past several episodes. But that is the topic of today's Volcano Watch. Where does the tephra go? The answer is blowing in the wind. So really, when we look at these events and what the trade winds have been doing, is thankfully pushing them out into the Ka'u Desert, where the majority of the tephra gets deposited not far from the eruptive vent, and it diminishes considerably after that. We've also seen this in some of the follow-up research in 2018. So it's really good that the fountains itself and the wind is abiding, blowing it out into the desert. But we see just how much it is accumulating away from the vent. So we're seeing that with a mile away from the vent can get 2 feet of this tephra being deposited when it's directly downwind. So that's a significant amount of tephra. And if you were to have very bad winds, say Kona winds, and blowing in from the south, pushing stuff up towards Volcano Village, Volcano House, Kīlauea military camp, and potentially the Jagger Overlook and the Kīlauea Overlook there. So the interesting thing here is just how much, and we can see this based upon the previous episodes, which were over 1,200 feet. Winds of 5 to 10 miles an hour. Both times tephra deposit were 2 feet thick, directly downwind, about the same distance from the vents to Kīlauea Overlook. And you might be thinking that it would impact, right, other places further downwind, but not as significantly. Just to show that distance here, we have the rough location of the vents, and then the distance to the Jagger Overlook at Uēkahuna. And for those wondering how far it is to other places, KMC is over 2 miles away. Volcano House, right there, 2.5 miles away. Right, so they would be getting tephra, and it would be enough to be impactful, especially with the Pele's hair, but not getting that super dense saturation that potentially could fall on Uēkahuna, Jagger, or Kīlauea Overlook, which would force the Hawaiian Volcanoes National Park to shut it down and potentially move it back significantly, such that maybe even KMC isn't accessible. You don't know, and it's happened before, right?
Yep. Hey, Dane, move that slider over there to Keonekekoi Overlook. In case people don't know how close it is, that's the closest viewing area. Unfortunately, winds go from east to west this time of year. And there's the overlook right there. And what is that?
1.34. Mm-hmm. So about 1.5 miles-ish, give or take, where you're standing. So yeah, they've also closed that down as well, which wouldn't be surprising if the winds were very unfavorable. And it's really hard to predict, but yeah,
that was the beginning of the eruption back in December, maybe the third episode. We were still in the Kona low winter phase of winds traveling up from the south, moving north, and they closed that down at that. I think it was the second or third episode.
Right. All right. So let's continue on. And here we have some photos from USGS they were able to put out, just showing the prequel build up to episode 26. We can see that large amount of discoloration on the backside of the Tephra cone, which is all SO2, it looks like to me. Large amount, though. And it's getting covered every time. So you're seeing that fresh deposit up there. And on the high-tech version, they're out measuring the Tephra deposits. Of course, they have a fancy way to do it. They're not going out there with a broomstick and a Sharpie, Lou.
Yeah, well, desperate times.
Right.
That's quite the instrument they got there.
Yeah, fancy looking. The cone is 20 meters above the pre-eruption ground surface, and the scale of this growth can be seen in the vehicle in the distance. So
I know she's got a respirator on as well, doesn't she?
Oh yeah, there's so much particles in the air. Mm-hmm. Every step I'm surprised that she's not sinking in more. There must be more dense stuff in there than some of the Tephra that you might find further away from the vent.
Hey, look at that image, Dane. Look there, the truck is out there half a mile to a mile or so. Did she walk up there? She didn't drive up there.
No, she walked up there.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting that it's not depressing. I mean, I remember walking around in fresh stuff in 2018, and it was like walking around in snow, right? Where you'd step in and sink every time a little bit, and she's right on top of the surface.
Yeah.
Anyways. And then the precursor reactivity into episode 26, cycles of gas pistoning were observed in North Vent Kīlauea Summit. The USGS geologists looked down upon the vent from the caldera rim on June 18th. The peak of each cycle has produced jetting sounds and brief glimpse of spatter, but the lava column was not visible and no flows were produced. So yeah, the sounds are also a whole thing that were really hard to capture and convey. Is the sounds you can get, especially from distance, like hearing it from fern forest when it's doing its high fountains. And there we see the high fountains in episode 26. And this was building, right? So it was 1,000 feet at one point, but we now know exactly how tall it was. They played a little bit on the conservative side just before analyzing and pushing it to what they decide upon on the height. Can't even get it all in frame.
Hey Dane, I like the term "in excess of" until we figure it out.
Right. It's somewhere. It's at least 1,000.
Right. Yeah.
And now you have, because people do want to know right away, how big are the fountains? They just give them a big ballpark number that you can't be wrong on.
Yeah.
And we see some of that, the zoom in, looking at the flows coming out of the area. And it's interesting, the flows to me haven't been as vigorous as they were previously, because so much of it is getting thrown up and deposited and making secondary flows that fall back down. I can't remember what the name of those are, but they had a name for them in here. I'll let you read it when we find it.
Okay.
And we can see like how good the views are from just the areas that are right accessible, easy access, like Kīlauea Overlook, which is where this is taken. So able to drive right up, get out, and there's a lava fountain so close that you can feel the heat from it, right? Which is really unique to be able to have. Limited time feature though, limited time.
Right. Yeah. That's a great overlook right there with a great view, but man, there isn't much parking.
Get up there early or get up there late at night.
Yeah. That's a tough parking lot.
Yeah, Phil will be back. For those asking, Phil will be back in a couple weeks. And I think here it is. Nope, this isn't the one. You can see those overflows coming out of the cone there, feeding these little flows that feed back into the main. And still using notebooks sometimes. We get to see that super fancy way of measuring, but then sometimes you just got to get out the notebook and the pen and just making observations out there. But I did like this one. So Tephra deposits from the recent lava fountain in Kīlauea Summit it blanketed in the western caldera rim, killing much of the vegetation in the area. Nevertheless, some plants are starting to sprout up again through the cinder. The resilient Halemaʻumaʻu fern is pictured here. The Halemaʻumaʻu is an endemic plant, is often one of the first plants in Hawaii to colonize new volcanic landscapes. So just popping up through there. So I hope it's ready, because I don't think this episodes are ending anytime soon. No, but it's just how resilient they are.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the picture of resiliency right there.
Right. Yeah, really cool shot. I like that one. Just a barren landscape covered with all this tephra from the past episodes of especially the tall fountains. And they're out on that road, cruising the old chain of craters. 4-wheel drive required to navigate, and especially where it gets thick. I mean, then that Jeep definitely sinking into it, even if you're not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that they go out there and keep driving on it, because it's like eventually if you stop driving on it, it's going to get so much stuff on it. And can we get a plow for to put on the front of this, not to clear the road, but just eventually it's going to run up into the undercarriage. It's going to be tall enough.
It's thick, right?
It's thick. But I did want to highlight this message that you put out yesterday that by USGS that the KW cam was restored on June 24th, as well as the laser rangefinder. They're also working on the F1. What is happening?
Get a round of applause for that, for the KW cam.
Did you find it eventually? Okay, Red Man. Yeah, so no F1 yet, but KW is back. Let's take a look at KW. Let's see if we can get this to refresh. There we go. So looking at the latest view there, and still operational as of right now.
Yeah.
And we saw how they went out with the last time. The winds were very poor, and there was one of those tall fountains just bombarding these cameras with fallout and molten material. So it's good to see it back. We will see. Basically, the wind dictates how long it lasts.
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate that with the cameras that the last few fountains have been tilted over to the east and not to the west.
Yeah,
towards those cameras. And I think you're going to show an image here of all the cameras lined up, and that's putting, I don't know, you call that putting all your eggs in one basket.
Just hope for the wind to be favorable.
Right.
But we do have the graph of the crater floor elevation back. Don't really have much data to work with here, but it'll fill itself out as long as it's online for a little while. So good to have them all these things back. And there are the camera setups that they have. It's a little more fancy than what we got down at Pohoiki, I think, Lou.
I don't know. I mean, they got rocks holding tripods. We're actually using, screws. I don't know. We might be.
I don't think that their server is a cell phone that is in the other room. Though, but it's cool to see all this, from back when several years ago, being like, oh, we don't have the ability to do anything live stream, to now having 3 live streams.
Yeah.
Always on, right? It's one thing to have one always on and then to turn on the others, but you have 3 always on.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. A lot of data limits and data rates. I know Lou's been trying to get some of the footage raw, and just how big those files are.
They're huge. Yeah. And so you got 3 cameras there. One of the cameras is a PTZ camera. All 3 of the live stream cameras are PTZ. So that's a huge thing right there, to just not have just a one straight lens. These guys can move this thing anywhere around the caldera, which is fantastic. And it'll be nice to have that range.
Yeah. It's just my worry is those cords about it. Those exposed cords.
Well, we've seen the buckets melt, right?
Yeah. One of those pieces lands on one of those cords, is just over. Like,
yeah.
Dang. Yeah. Need some electrical conduit or something.
I would think so, but they seem to be pretty confident because there's a lot of wires running there.
Yeah. I mean, I think they just take the L if it hits them, type of thing. It's just a shame how long they, take to get back up once they do get hit, right? But they do a lot of work, and it's a lot of maintenance, and we see how things go wrong and how much of a pain it is to go back out there to fix one single camera, right? And we do have another, the S1 camera looks like it.
Yeah, we noticed that today, huh? Took
fell
a digger
down a little bit.
Yeah. And they're working on this equipment all the time. We catch them on the live cam working, moving the camera, stacking the rocks. They're busy all the time. This is a major project to be able to run all this equipment.
Right. do have a question about, is the thermal
Mm-hmm.
cam back? It's not yet, not public. So hopefully soon, and hopefully for 27. They still have what the forecast would suggest a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at, what was it, 19th through the 22nd is the window.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question there, Riley. And take another look. It's a lot of cord exposed, guys.
It's a lot of cord.
Yeah,
A lot of cord. That's all your eggs in one basket right there.
Hope for the best. It's
Yeah.
the way of the volcano. And then out in the Tephra, and again, it's just there. It looks like they're sinking in. Like if you look at their foot a little bit, let me do that. And look, that foot's in the stuff.
Yeah, I can see up in front there.
But there's no footprints either.
No.
So maybe it is just a little denser. Be interesting to see. Like you needed one of them in your hand almost to be like, oh, yeah, because I remember one of them, what was it? Fisher 17 in 2018, walking up the back of it, and somebody's suggesting like, oh, it's probably, really loose stuff. We're going to sink in. And then we went and touched it, and it was like, actually, this is really dense. That was a different type of eruption and different dynamics, but still, it just shows that sometimes you just got to, it can surprise you.
Yeah.
And there's the cluster of the cams, the trio, and the laser rangefinder. So pretty cool stuff, and especially being able to control them remotely, all solar panel powered. And I think you get 10 points for a hit.
10 points.
All right. Well, we did want to talk about Pohoiki. And we have a fresh time lapse of the work that's been going on to dredge out all this material from the 2018 eruption that inundated the bay at the end of the eruption, and in its aftermath continued to grow for months. And now work is rapidly progressing down there to be able to dig it out and see what it does, because something like this has never been attempted before, as far as we can tell. And we're going to just see how it goes. A lot of plans had a lot more material, or a lot more infrastructure in place to try and prevent the material from returning, but we're just going to see how it goes. And hopefully, dredging hopefully dredging is possible to keep it going, but we just see how much work they're being able to do here. So they build out that little levee and then work it back out to be able to get to the bottom. And it's just this one backhoe and one truck that's able to do all this work, and just how fast they're able to get through it. So now we're coming into,
this is all the new stuff right here.
Yeah.
You can really see the depth if you look at the wall on the right-hand side, and how far down the excavator is and how high the fence is up above it. So those guys are jamming.
Yeah. And you can see the high tide. They're taking it just so the water barely emerges during high tide. So they're getting out as much as they can. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this progresses. I did also just the work. Let's just look at the work, nothing else. No night sequences, no days off. Let's see what's been done down there really quickly. There's a huge amount of material being moved out. Really cool, and we appreciate the Ohana, the Hale, for allowing us to get this camera up there and to share some of the images with you. DNLR also put out a press release today, as well as a video of the work, and this was taken about when that time lapse ends. So just wanted to show it close up, how this is progressing, because it is pretty cool, right? How one backhoe can get in there and do all the work. But it really is easy to move, right? Once he gets going.
Yeah, I mean, what would be the point of having 2 backhoes and 2 trucks? They're moving so fast. They
Right.
work safe, and they're working fast. It's perfect.
That arm going to be pretty rusty though by the end of this whole project.
It's a lot of salt water, tracks, everything. I'm sure that was worked into the bid. So hopefully we'll get some new shots up of the pad and see where all this material is going soon, and see if they're moving anything else around. I'm kind of curious of what else is happening around the area, because the pile that was up top that I captured 2 weeks ago was pretty big already, and they've moved 5+ times.
Yeah.
Huh?
A huge amount of material
Yeah.
since then. They'd barely gotten started. Now we see the channel emerging. So they do have a lot of slope over here too, right? That 4-to-1 gradient coming down. So there's just a large amount of material getting thrown out of there. And we're not going to show the whole video. There's also an interview. We did post this on Hawaii Tracker. If you want to get that full update from Finn McCall from Dobar, he was down there to talk about it. But sum it up, it's the project's ahead of schedule. It's moving rapidly. Originally, they were talking about breaching the entrance and the mid-August. I wonder what that timeline is now, because it feels like they're not that far away already. And you still have another month plus until then. So,
yeah.
I wonder
you could
how
hear it in
funny
his voice, right? You could hear him when he was talking about it. Like, well, we were set for August. He just got the feeling like it's coming a lot quicker. And Janice, here's a question here, Dane. Janice has a question. How wide are they going to make this? Well, the original channel was what, 40 foot? Do you recall how much they're going to cut this open?
Yeah, I mean, I think at its smallest point is right at the mouth between the old pier and the lava on the north side. And I believe that was just around 40 feet, maybe a little more.
Right.
Kind of hard to measure with the jacks that are out there too. So about 40 feet, but then it's going to stretch out to about 320 feet at the mouth. So that's going to be a large mouth, and we're just hoping that that's big enough, that there's enough material getting moved out of here that it is able to hold its form, essentially. So it will be pretty interesting, and that slope is going to be very, accessible for people, whereas before the slope that it likes to take is very steep half the time. It changes. It's never the same. So some cool footage. We'll go ahead and continue on from there, but we will be keeping an eye and keeping the webcam going to see how this progresses, as well as what developments happen once they do make it the breach. And hopefully we can get down there with the drone when they breach it, because that's going to be an interesting day.
Yep, absolutely. With a crane, right?
Right. With a crane.
Boom. Big giant boom stretched out.
All right, that brings us to community corner.
Oh, all right. Let's set up here. I didn't even set that up. I set it up down low here. I'm gonna do it the old fashioned way. Here we go. All right, let's see what's happening around. But first, look who I have. These guys I wanted to bring up real quick for the community corner, something that we've been doing for the last 6 months. We partnered with Pohoiki to complete 6 months of a collaborative development, training, and testing, creating a culturally grounded AI-powered workshop series for youth. Now we're preparing to bring what we developed in the classroom using Hawaiian Mololelo and Mele to build cultural connection, digital literacy. We try to tell you guys a little bit more about what we're doing and the programs that we offer, which is volcano education and digital resilience, and also our youth development. And this has been something big that we've been doing for the last 6 months. And we actually had a 2-day workshop going on with some interns and setting up for the next phase of our program. So I just wanted to share that and show the shot of us hanging out there. And let's take a look up at the park. Of course, parking, and construction. I know there's a lot of stuff going on with the episodes and the eruption, but you got to pay attention to what's happening with construction. There's a shot of Keanakekoi Overlook. Visitors observing the lava fountain from Halemaʻumaʻu crater from the Keanakekoi side of the caldera. A photo from Janice Way. This is probably the most popular spot to go to, but it's also the most difficult. It's the furthest drive, and the parking is cramped, but just be patient. You'll see going down here to go park into the Devastation Trail parking lot. They try to barrier off the sides of the road because it just drops off, and nene are everywhere up there. So just pay attention. The Uēkahuna observation deck is open. This is the new area that was the Jagger Museum. I talk about this every week because it's kind of a hidden gem up there with these fountains being so tall. You get quite the look, and there's no crowd, easy parking. They don't have any permanent bathrooms, but they got the old porta-johns up there. And this is what you see. I grabbed this from the last episode. And you can see there's nobody out there. You would have this view to yourself. Coming up to the new roundabout, which is actually making some good progress. This is right as you go through the main gate. And this is what it used to look like, the roundabout. And Yvonne sent us a new picture, and you can see they've laid the brick. So they're getting there. Dane, you like the roundabouts, don't you? Yeah.
You should make them as small as possible, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, because anybody with a big truck and a trailer,
shouldn't be able to make the turn.
Right. Just have to drive straight through, right over the bricks. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Like the one at the bottom of Ainaloa.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Here's the Welcome Center at the KMC. You can get to this by just driving all the way up straight from the main gate, and you can't miss it. There's signs. Parking is back behind the under construction new HVO facility that's right there. And everything is status quo. We're just work in progress in the park. Nothing closed. Roads are open, but things do change. So if you're new to the park, I always recommend going into the Welcome Center, talk to the rangers in there, and find out if anything is important that you need to know, especially if you're going to go down Chain of Craters or you're going to go up the Mauna to the overlook up top there. Just ask. And you can also inquire about these programs that they have going on. I don't know if they're going on every day. Some things change up there with weather, staffing. So you want to go there before you just want to explore the summit and go stand out by the flagpole for 40 minutes and wonder what's going on. Just walk inside, find out what's happening. I do recommend the Kīlauea above and below program they have going on. That is a great one. That's a fantastic hike. It's not difficult to do. This is artists in residence. Because of the park's construction, a lot of the programs are not going on. But down at the Kahuku unit, they're running programs here and there. This is artists in residence, Hollywood duo Tijuana Ricks and Anthony Piro. The National Parks Arts Foundation June-July Artists in Residence, Tijuana Ricks and Anthony Piro, an award-winning creative team with support from Friends of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. They'll share classic storytelling techniques and how they use them in screenwriting. Ricks is an actress, director. She's also a writer, known for Billions, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. Piro, a former marine biologist and educator, has developed over 40 creative projects, including the animated films Pigeons in Paradise. That is going on Saturday on the 28th from 9:30 to 10:30 down at the Kahuku unit. Dane, how about that combination? A marine biologist with an actor, director, and screenwriter. How do you get that combination together?
I mean, should be producing the next Aquaman.
I was waiting as I was reading that the other day, setting up this, and I was kind of thinking that I'm like, is this going to lead into some type of water? I don't know, marine something, but interesting combination. So hopefully somebody gets out there and goes to it and lets us know. Life on the Edge is happening at the park. Still, it's all year through December 31st, 2025. 4 times a day. Check into the KWC at KMC for more information. Above and below, this is the one I was just talking about, the Kīlauea Iki crater hike, the event that erupted to a height of 1,900 feet. And boy, we're getting close, right? 1,600 or 650 feet away. And we're right there.
That was like what, a 20-story building or more,
right?
Like a 40-story building.
So right now we're 3 football fields standing up end to end right now.
Huge.
1,900 feet. Oh man. If we get to see that, then I'll be pretty stoked. This one here, that Kīlauea Iki one is I lost everything. That's it.
You killed it.
I killed it. Don't use the back button.
Go ahead and end the stream now.
Let's catch me up here. Oh, I did it again. There we go. Right there. 11:30. This meets over at the Kīlauea Iki parking area. It doesn't meet at the KMC, but I recommend going to KMC first and finding out if they're having it, because we do see weather right now. We've had 2 days of heavy rain coming in, and things can change. So that's the one thing that determines whether these events are going on. These park ranger events is weather determined. Life on the edge there, and there is a shot of what Dane was just showing us on the Pohoiki, and I had a still shot of that kind of lined up for this because I know how amazing this cut is going to be over here. Once they get a little further out and that crane comes in, I'm imagining that the boom's got to stretch all the way across and start pulling this.
Well, they got to go to the other side and then work backwards, and
yeah. Right? It's going to be fascinating. It'll be a great day down there to see this. And right now there's a lot of people out there checking it out, because I'm hearing a little chatter from friends that are all going down there looking. So everybody's interested.
Yeah, and we did have a question. I'll throw it in right here. From Kirk asks, oh, did I not grab it? There you go. Halfway there, I hear that it's going to be 230 feet wide. I think 320. And do you know if they're going to put down some breakwater cement blocks or cement piers? Nope. What you see is what you get, and we are just hoping for the best.
Yep.
We shall see together how this rolls out. But yeah, I do want to go ahead and, encourage people to sign up for our newsletter as well as our volcano alerts, which we send out when the fountaining begins for each one of these episodes. If you would like to sign up, you see the information on screen there with the hveri.org/subscribe, and just click the list you want, or you can take both and stay connected, right? So got that going. We also have all of our other social media sites, including the Facebook, the YouTube, our Twitter or X, and Instagram, and Lou's favorite, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, almost to 100.
The slow grind on LinkedIn.
Dane doesn't think we're going to live stream on LinkedIn when we hit 100, but we are. We are live on LinkedIn. There we go.
Well, that brings us to, thanking everybody that helps make this possible, which includes the Kīlauea Recovery, the Puna Strong, and the 5x grants, all through the County of Hawaii and facilitated through the Hawaii Community Foundation. Helps make this program, as well as our youth development and digital resilience programs, possible, and their continued support. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, we can kick off into thanking everybody that tuned in today. The likes, subscriptions, the shares, especially when we don't have a live episode right now going. It really helps out. And with the algorithm, we do want to thank everybody that do make donations if you are inclined. We do take those over at hveri.org/donate, as well as the YouTube super chats. We do encourage the donation website, though. We pocket more of it at the end of the transaction there. We are a 501c3 community-based organization, and that means your donations are tax deductible. All right, and we have $10 in there from Raven. Your team is amazing. Thank you for the great work. I appreciate the support there, as well as everybody that on the other side that I may not be able to see. There it is. Katrin G with $25. Appreciate that. All right.
There you go.
Well, we can get into part 2, which is our episodes 14 through 26 of the ongoing eruption. We talked about it last week that the time we only had 25, but we were penciling in 26, and sure enough, it delivered not long after the live stream.
Yeah.
And we can go back over it here today. So let me get that back on stage. Here we go. Episode 14. So at this point, we hadn't had the super high fountains, and we were playing word games where I was like, "Oh, they're not high fountains; they're tall fountains. It's not the same, you know." And basically, just trying to give people like, "Hey, it's worth going and seeing because there's big things, you know, there's cool things happening up there." So we are now at March 19th in our timeline, and we have an eruption that lasts over a day, puts out 2.4 million cubic meters, which is on the low side, catching up from our previous episodes, with some 225 meter high fountains following a 5-day pause. So let's see what the fountains and activity of that one look like. Episode 14. We do not have that. It looks so different.
Oh yeah.
With
Completely.
just that, none of that cone has formed really yet. Not to what we know it as now. And it's still getting kind of drowned out by the lava flows that it's producing. We still do. It's fun to watch how much that hill changes and morphs over the course of the episode.
I mean, we were pretty much still at floor level there.
Right. That's what it feels like. It's just a baby.
Yeah.
But I mean, in any other time, this would be a crazy eruption to go and see. And for years, we were unable to even see the lava right at the summit. And now we're kind of picky. It almost feels like. Oh, what did I just do?
Here we go. Wrap it up.
I got to remember my controls change at this point.
Yes.
So here we'll look at the thermal map of this one's just before the previous episode, but you can see just how much of that covering and the small ooze outflows that are happening on the far other side of the eruptive vents ongoing. Just showing how that inner layer is that jelly donut, as we like to say, where it's molten parts and then a crust on top of it, but most of it's molten inside. God, did it again.
Hang in
it's
there.
Just a click. It's just a click.
It's always
I
a
have
click.
to click. I need to take the other hand off the thing.
Right.
We can see there some of those cams again, and
Oh yeah.
just in the danger zone,
Living on the edge.
And that would get us to episode 15 on March 25th.
You know,
This
real
one-
quick before you jump into 15, you know, a lot of the conversation that some of us were having with 14 was, well, this might be it, because we didn't see real high fountains. We didn't see really much lava flow across the floor. It was an interesting episode because we didn't know what was coming.
Right. Yeah, I mean, little did we know that it was going to build up. We were starting to see these, day-long plus eruptions taking place. And a very short cycle between them too, right? Only 5 days at this point. Not big fountains, long durations, not large volumes. And the heights are growing consistently though, right? So this is, I think, the first one over 300 meters. So we're at, 800 plus feet?
Yeah.
And 31 hours. So let's go ahead and check that one out.
This one here had small spatter fountains. I mean, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was like 8 different 5 to 10 minutes apart. Oh, we had a lot of different activity like that going on for quite a while from notes here.
Right. And also talking about that precursor activity and how we were talking about earlier, how the last eruption the last episode 26 really just built up and stayed. And this is going to show here what the precursor activity that we've become a kind of accustomed to looks like, right? It looks like we have a eruption. It looks like it's put down, or an episode. It looks like it's put down lava onto the floor, which was at one point how we were calling the episodes, is when I produced a lava flow, but that wasn't quite as useful as what we're using now. And here we can see that precursor activity, but it's about to flip. And when it flips, it goes really quickly. So still some precursors splashing around. We have this pond of lava, perch pond kind of, and then it starts to drain back. Can't decide, right? But
right. Yeah, we haven't been doing the timing of this drain back for the last couple episodes. Is just total different.
You're not getting this anymore,
right?
Really.
That style precursor activity is shifted.
Yeah. Now it just glows and sputters and then turns on and goes.
Yeah.
Type of thing. At least in the last 2. And then all of that lava drains back in underneath, and were these on like 10-minute cycles or something like that?
Yep, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep. So we were fully in that phase, and then once it starts, here we go.
Yeah. Well, look at the floor covered.
Right.
How fast.
It's a lot of lava coming out. It's just not the big giant fountains that we're used to. But as we were talking about earlier, when it does do that giant fountain, it gets distributed all that material so much further.
Yep.
And we start to see it now getting up over that rim, these fountains and the deposits of material happening on the backside of the caldera.
I think this was the episode that Anna and I went up top, and this is where they closed off Uēkahuna and Kīlauea Overlook, I think. 15. There's so many episodes. Let me see here. Yeah, this was it.
Just huge volumes. Probably about the peak of the fountain right there.
Dane, check your cable. Your audio went buggy. Oh, because you're playing the video.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they make it so you can't touch this. It's really hard to get the sound to mute with this presentation.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's about the peak of the fountain. The fountain there. They're definitely getting bigger. I'm not going to show all of this one. Just wanted to skip forward a little bit and look how little of that cone has developed that we've come so to. But yeah, now we're into that high fountains. This is that point where we're like, wow, they're actually over 1,000 or close. We're getting closer. You have all that gas pistoning in the early phase of the precursor activity. All right. And here we see the thermal map showing some of those ooze outs and all that lava flow produced by the episodes. I believe this is just of the previous episode, though. And that gets us to episode 16. We have the same amount of the same height on the fountains here. It starts on March 31st, but it goes all the way to April 2nd. So a day and a half duration and approximately 6 million cubic meters. One of the getting more volume on this one. And if we take a look at the fountains from that one, south vent this time, I mean, north vent does have activity going, but that south vent's the dominant one. I remember back at this time we were talking about south vent becoming more dominant, and eventually it didn't matter because there was less. I think it's more now north vent domination, but
yeah, this was also the event that the episode that mile marker 35 and 37 out on Highway 11 was getting the Tephra.
Oh, right. So we had to get that warning. You can see how the wind direction, I mean, we're rotating in the chopper, but that wind isn't going in the ideal direction. It's blowing more north than we would have liked. And this is one of those off wind days that kind of shows how bad it could get. You know, you're on a really bad wind with 1,000 or 1,200 foot plus fountain, how much material you can get and the impacts that it will have. And we see some of those the lava flowing out on the thermal map early on in that episode. And then eventually the extent of that 6 million cubic meters and how it has all these ooze outs and then the far reaches of the flow, just showing again, it's all molten on the inside. And the lava channels that are deforming, all that. It's pretty cool. Not a lot of elevation up there. It's been making its own elevation inside of the floor of the caldera. So you get these lava perch ponds, and they drain out and create channels that flowed like they're flowing downhill. So pretty cool. You get a little bit of it all in there. Episode 17. Still the no tiny fountains on 17, aren't there?
Yeah. This one was a cool one though, because we had the kind of lava river happening
right
out there.
About the same duration, less volume. And I had a 9-day pause going into it. So we were expecting it to be pretty spectacular. And it really wasn't. It was an episode, but it wasn't the episodes that, we started to see up until this point. We just had a few episodes now that were trying to push 1,000 feet. And then this one really back to kind of the beginning of the whole sequence. And we have a new map produced by USGS. So the maximum thickness through episode 16 is 167 feet up until that point. And they don't have the volume's changing so fast that you put out a number and then it's wrong. Because something else happened and now it's changed.
Right.
But it has covered almost 790 acres of the floor of the caldera. And we see the extent of that flow goes a little bit different direction, but the pond is still in the same spot. It's using one of the previous channels, and we have the small ooze ups happening as well. Not as much though with the reduced volume. And episode 18, getting back into some fountaining action, and this one's a two-parter, right? It had a lot of precursor activity, and then it built up and finally went, but the fountain phase was only 10 hours, which is something we're getting more accustomed to. Those less than 12-hour episodes. But it was still weird calling things at this phase. It's like, what's the episode start? Does it start when lava starts coming out, or does it start with the giant fountain? And historically, it started with the giant fountain, not the precursor stuff. So it's nice to see it back in line with that more. Up in the chopper, flying around the south side of the caldera. You can see the old Chain of Craters Road there coming in from the left. And the south vent producing this 250 foot or 250 meter high fountain. And again, the wind's not very good during this episode. You can see how they're blowing to the right. We'd rather than be blowing more to the left and away from the camera. Creates foggy conditions, poor visibility, but all those other health impacts potentially from the bog and particulate matter in the air. And yeah, I believe this one was also the one that a lot of people, if they got dusted with Pele's hair and Tephra, this was the episode of that.
Mm-hmm.
And direction was just so poor. And we have a new map with the maximum thickness now up to 194 feet. And they did have a volume at this point of 23.1 billion gallons. Huge amount of lava put into the floor. Oh, I did it
Here
again.
we go again.
At least let's just check on the live view. Yep.
Why not?
The live view is terrible. Don't check the live view.
Come back.
And the Tephra getting deposited is starting to accumulate, and that drive is a little fresh coat after every little episode. Yeah, the Lance is in there talking about getting pelted by the Pele's hair and the downpour. It was just, the rain too. Such poor conditions out there that day.
Yeah, Phil and I were up there for right around that one too, just coated. And we I think Anna and I, we got in the park as Phil was getting out of there.
Right, I remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the kids are covered with it. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, I'm gone.
And that one brings us to episode 19, and kind of a short episode, 8 hours. We're getting more in line, falling only a 3-day pause, and then maximum height of 125 meters, so on the smaller side, and 2.8 million cubic meters of volume erupted. So not the biggest, not the smallest, but maybe on the small side a little bit. We see that early activity.
Yeah.
From one of the webcams.
Which I thought we would have seen with episode 26, which we did for what, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we were right into full-blown fountain.
Right. So that was the beginning. And then we have
This is an image from one of our viewers, Gina. Her and her husband Chuck were up there and captured that one. And we don't see enough of the floor anymore, so I wanted to share that one.
Right. Everybody gets distracted by the giant fountains.
Right.
How would those be distracting? All right. So, yeah, thanks for pulling that one. And one more from USGS. So, healthy fountain, but just only 125 meters high, not producing that giant amount of Tephra either. That's blowing. When it's down inside the caldera like this, yeah, there's a lot of Tephra still being produced, but not nearly as much. And it's all getting deposited just inside the caldera. So you don't, or most of it is. When it's so tall, it's all over the place, really. And episode 20 coming in here on May 5th and lasting only 4.5 hours. Quick one. 150 meter tall fountains and 2.4 million cubic meters. A decent amount of volume for how short it was. Really.
Right. Yeah.
So episode 20 began kind of how we've been getting used to, right? Is that low level activity, but it's consistent and it slowly builds up and then rapidly builds up after that. But we do see that cone, that hill of Tephra now more pronounced. But it just grows and grows, that one.
Yeah, those dome fountains or something like that. And then catch a quick drain back, and then we're right into full fountain. Okay, that's a shot from Don Stringer when he was up at Keonekekoi for this episode.
You can see all that lava flowing across the crater floor there. Fanning out, getting wide.
I'm a sucker for all the lava on the floor. I mean, I love the fountains too. Don't get me wrong, but when that whole floor is lit up, there's nothing like it.
Episode 21, 8 hours fountaining phase, 5-day pause, 225 meter tall fountains, and 3.1 million cubic meter volume. So decent amount coming out of there, and 8 hours is kind of where we're at now when we're ballparking how long the fountaining phase is, looking at the most recent episodes. But 225, healthy amount. Let's take a look at it. And yeah, the conditions were so poor at the beginning of that one.
This poor V2 camera, it just goes in and out. So I stopped it, kind of froze on the fountains there. You can see there, and I got to play in twice in there, because it was so fast. It was a short eruption, short episode,
and poor conditions.
But this V2 gives it's such a nice camera with this caldera view, but nothing you can do when there's everything possible in the way.
All right. And we have one more here.
Yes, two cameras.
It should be a better view, but
yeah,
short episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can only slow down 140 frames so slow before it just looks like a slideshow.
Right. But yeah, quick episode there. Gets us to episode 22. We see that 275 meter tall fountain getting up there now. And 9-day pause and 10-hour fountain. And into a little over a month ago.
Yeah.
And early phases of that eruption. We can see what are those birds called? I always forget.
The white seabirds.
Yeah. But that deposit, though, and that south vent's getting pretty buried in this whole thing.
Yeah.
It will be back.
The south vent has taken a beating for the last couple episodes from just
right.
I mean, it's still up there. I mean, the last episode 26, there was, I want to say small, but it was pretty big, but it was still there. Just nothing like the north vent. You get it?
Hawaiian form, I can't remember. Somebody said Bruce, but I can't.
No,
there's another name. Anyways, we're up to 213 feet now on that thickness. So we've about 50 feet over the past episodes since the start of this program at our halfway cutoff. And May 21st, we see very similar, but those cones from the September 2023 eruption basically gone. Little iceberg tops poking out from those previous episodes, or not the previous episodes, previous eruptions. And 24.6 billion gallons up until this point. And slowly increasing the size, added about another 50 acres onto its width, perimeter. But big fountains, and they got that fan fountain.
Right, that's the fanning that's been going on, which is really amazing.
And I think the wind wasn't really that strong during this one, but it was trade winds. So that 5 mile an hour, 10 mile an hour that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's enough, that 5-10 miles an hour, to make a big difference on where all that debris ends up going. Oh, that gets us right into episode 23 on May 25th. And 6 hours of fountaining after a 10-day pause. But now the big fountains, 350 meters. We are there, into the, and 4.6 million cubic meters.
350 meters. That's a lot of feet.
That's a lot of feet. What is that? Be 1,150 feet. 1150. So we are really up there now. Oh man.
Yeah, look at that.
It's so big now. And you can see all that dust getting kicked off of the landing of fresh fallout, all
Mhm.
this molten stuff falling from the sky on top of it, kicking up into the air. That's all particulate matter getting blown downwind. So not only do you have all the fog and Peleus hair being emitted from the eruption, but the dust cloud that's getting kicked up when it all lands back to the ground. Wasn't much of a consideration before, but with these giant fountains putting so much material that high up into the air, I mean, look how much that cloud is just black off the wall.
Yep.
Of the material falling down and kicking up all the dust.
This is when we were also capturing a lot of video clips, a lot of clips on the rock falls.
Yeah, this was about that time where they
Mhm.
started to happen, where it's getting so much material on that back rim that it builds up and deposits, insulates itself, and eventually gravity takes over and it falls back down the crater wall. Which
Yep.
makes for some cool shots.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just crazy how tall these fountains are at this point. Makes you wonder if it's about the nozzle or if it's about the gas or, a combination of everything. And
Mm-hmm.
the volumes aren't, significantly bigger. The durations aren't significantly different, but it's definitely a lot more pressure coming out of that thing.
Right.
We got one more here. This is from Dawn as well.
Yep.
From Kenekikoi inside the ropes.
Look at the crowd out there. I mean, you made it all the way there. I would stop right there. I don't need to go all the way down. I get it though. I mean, you fly over, it's an amazing experience.
Episode 24. So 6-day pause, 365 feet. So we are, or meters. So we're picking up. We're on 1,200 feet at this point, and 5 million cubic meters of volume erupted. So big episode, this one.
Yeah, this had some great views from up at the Uēkahuna overlook as well. Again,
June 4th. Just crazy fountains now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all that material just getting coated onto the wall all the way up it. That builds up quickly, but trade winds really being beneficial in this, even though they're not strong. It's just enough to keep it going into the Ka'u Desert.
Hey, Dane, hit that one more time. Check out the topography of the lava coming down, all the levels, the stages going into the caldera. I mean, it's changed so much, and it flows out and down, the perch ponds everywhere.
It's building itself a ramp with all that material.
Mm-hmm.
It's a steep ramp to the top, but
it's steep.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And we now get a new map from USGS, and we're up to 841 acres and 220 feet thick. It's harder to get thicker, but it's still doing it in just the little bits of September's 2023 eruption. The top's poking out still. There's still more up on that down drop block, but it's taking maybe half of it so far. And just
this was
you can't even fit it in the frame.
No, and that's what we're seeing now. The last 2 to 3 episodes that I don't know the V3. I don't think it can widen out anymore.
Right, this is as wide as she goes.
Yeah,
the other ones are able to get it in the frame, but this one's just so close. But yeah, that's really spectacular fountaining. Like, there's so much up there, and just the lava flows from it are kind of comical to me, because it's just like, this is a lava flow just from the downwind fallout,
right?
And it blends over to the point where it's like, well, there's material here, it's just not flowing yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really impressive stuff these last few episodes. And episode 25, the one we went over last live stream.
Last week. Yep.
Yeah, last week. And 8 hours of fountaining. The fountain height at that point was 350 meters. So about to 1150 and 5.3 million, or 1150 feet, sorry, and 5.3 million cubic meters of volume erupted. So big eruption. Get the map. See that the depth is now up to 236 and same extent of the lava. Let's look at the fountains. This was early on when it was building, huh?
Yeah. This one also had the 20,000 foot plume on it, 6,000 meters.
I feel like that plume needs to have the conditions be right for it too to exist.
Mm-hmm.
The winds can push it out too much.
SO2 emissions were estimated at more than 50 to 75,000 tons per day during episode 25.
Healthy eruption.
Yep.
But for reference, I think 2018, the highest peak of that was 200,000 tons.
Kind of like Mauna Loa too, right?
Yeah. Same ballpark category.
235,000 maybe.
Yeah, crazy amounts. And there she goes.
Yeah. This was vertical too. This one was no wind blowing, no real wind blowing, and no angle in this fountain. She was going straight for quite a long time.
You can see all that dust kicking up too.
Mm-hmm.
On the back end of it. Yeah, pretty cool. Watch that one more time because that's just such a cool fountain. And all that dust just, oof. Wouldn't want to be anywhere near that stuff.
Nope. No way.
Yeah, I would not. That dust. Ugh. All right, let's move on to the latest episode with the tallest fountains yet, coming in at 1,250 feet, the 380 meters, and 6.6 million cubic meters erupted. So big boy episode. We're talking about how we're waiting for it to do something special.
And there it was.
It keeps getting more and more special each episode.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have a time lapse, and it just immediately gets off the frame, just completely off the frame. Comes back at the end, right, before it cuts off. But once it cuts off, it's really done quickly.
So when I did this one here, I have to make a decision: V1, 2, or 3. And I know 2 is going to give us trouble somewhere with weather. 3, they zoom in at the base sometimes,
and then it will adjust and change all over the place.
Right. So
at least it's static.
Right. But we can't get the entire fountain in there.
Yeah, it's just we'll find it somewhere else though.
Yep.
There she is.
There it is. Yeah, I grabbed it.
And I just my question on when it's this big is where is your line for the top? The fountain is 1,250 feet. Yeah. Where? Because like it gets up so tall and then it just starts like carrying in the wind.
That's an interesting, right?
And that's so hard.
Here's the question. When the measurement was taken, what time was it? Yeah. Right? There should be a time stamp with that measurement. It was 12:50 at 3:30 a.m.
If the cameras were completely static, then I'd be willing to just, okay, let's find out what the height of one of these things.
Yeah, we can do it
from
that
there.
way.
We can do pixel analysis to figure out how many pixels is, how many feet, or how, tens of feet or whatever. And from that, we would be able to set up like this image, and you'd have little bars going across the sides and saying like 1,200 feet, 1,300 feet, 1,400. It's like the jump competitions in high school, right? Where you got to hit the paddle.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, but I mean the cameras, they do some really good stuff. We didn't really. I'm sure when they put that V3 there, they're like, "Will this be wide angle enough for us?"
I'm sure it'll be
We
fine.
laugh at the person that asked the question. Because back when they chose that spot, it was probably 50-meter fountains, not no 360-meter fountains. Didn't even think of them.
Nope.
But is that the end? I think that might be.
I think
the
that's
end.
it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We did get through at this point. See if we got any questions in the chat. Let's go ahead and actually bring up the live view. Okay. Let's see about a different live view.
Another camera. There we go. Hey, we
go to B1.
We had a $20 donation from Linda over on our donation platform. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. HVERI.org/donate.
Yep, and
I didn't put it in the chat. I jumped over there.
The new cameras going up, replacement for older cameras have been destroyed. It's the same cameras. They're just only one got destroyed, and that one was melted. That was what the B1.
Yeah,
and the rest of them they just had the cords damage, which we could, when we were looking at the images earlier, kind of explains itself how that happened when the wind is not cooperative. But yeah, they repaired them and put them up there, and they're over by the Uēkahuna overlook, the Kīlauea overlook. They're not accessible area, but I don't think you'd want to be there seeing some of those photos, especially when the F1 went offline. Its last photo it put out looked like it was getting hammered. And Riley asks, I wonder if that hill gets taller. Will it fall into the crater? Yes, parts of it will. And we've been seeing that all these molten rock falls of buried, still molten material coming off that wall and splattering itself on the way down. And is that? Yep, I think that might be it in questions. Unless
I don't see any more up in there. There we go.
We are at an hour and a half at this point.
We are. Yep. Before you wrap us up, I wanted to say thank you to everybody online that's been putting images, videos on Hawaii Tracker or sending them to us in the multiple different ways that you can reach us. We appreciate it. I did drop the link. It's up top for Hawaii Tracker if you want to join the Facebook group and keep the images coming. Thank you to the Pineapple crew that, as always, has stuff available for me in the morning, what's going on. And a lot of the stuff that you see here is what they throw us. Gina and Dawn, your images were on there as well. Thank you, guys. And Dane, it's all you.
Yeah. Unless something happens that's completely unexpected, we will be back next Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. These episodes, we will be putting out notifications through our email alerts, as well as posting on the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group, as well as our other social media sites when that happens. If you do want to get notified so you can get up there, I'd recommend checking out the hveri.org/subscribe option. And with that, I believe we are good, and I'm joined today by Lou Two Pineapples Itori, and I am Dane DuPont. We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short, and we'll see you next week. Aloha.